Greetings, mighty companions. Anna Kujawa here, and we are doing Course in Miracles like we always do on Mondays. On Mondays, we have Miracle Mondays where we do Miracle Roulette. When Miracle Roulette is where we allow the spirit that we share, that divine spark, the voice of truth within us, to decide for us what we study from in A Course in Miracles. We do an opening, a prayer invocation where we ask Spirit to decide for us what we hear from A Course in Miracles. And then we do the random number generator, asking Spirit to use the random number generator to choose for us what we study. So it's always miraculous. It's always miraculous when we do random number generator. The answers that come in are downright spooky. So we are going to first do a 5 to 7 minute opening meditation prayer where we're inviting Spirit in to decide for us what we hear. We are calming our minds, quieting our minds, opening our minds that we might be able to hear the voice for Spirit guiding us, guiding our thinking, correcting our thinking, which is the mindset that produces miracles. The purpose of A Course in Miracles is that we would have peace. That is the motivation of A Course in Miracles, not knowledge. The motivation of A Course in Miracles is peace. And so we're going to practice having some peace, quieting our minds, that we might be able to hear the voice for truth that we all have within us, that is just waiting within all of us to give us its guidance, to guide our thinking in the paths of peace. All right, lovely to see you all. Hi Andrew, hi Julie, hi Monica. Lovely to see you all. Thrilled to see your names and to feel your presence. So for about 5 minutes, we are going to go within, and I'm going to facilitate that. So close your eyes, take a breath, and I'm going to turn off the fan right here. All right. So I want you to close your eyes and take a breath. Close your eyes and take a breath. And just bring your awareness back home to the right now, where God is, where Spirit is, where heaven is, and where you are. Right now, in the holy instant, the powerful present. Tell your mind, come back home, mind. It's safe to come back home to the now. Bring your mind back to the now. The present moment is where the Spirit of truth within you abides, waiting for you, that it might give you the peace and the power and the joy that is your inheritance as a child of God. All things are answered in quiet. Spirit lives in the present. So do you. And breathe and be present. Only now, only now, only now. What is now? Who is now? And then let us practice the holy instant by giving this holy instant, this present moment to Spirit. And we say, this holy instant do we give to you, Spirit. Be you in charge. For we would follow you, Spirit, certain that your direction will bring us peace and healing. This holy instant do we give to you, Spirit, be you in charge. Now, Spirit, we ask for you to decide through the random number generator what book of the Course you would have us hear today and what section in that book. And we thank you. We trust your love for us. We trust your decision for us. We trust that you know exactly what our calls for help and calls for love are, and you know exactly what section in A Course in Miracles will answer that perfectly. We trust your love. We trust your brilliance. We trust your care for us. And we trust your love for us. And with that trust, we say to you, Spirit, that we share, decide for us what we hear from A Course in Miracles today. And thank you, and be you in charge. Beautiful. Take a breath. Wonderful. All right. That's how we do it. That is the way to ask for guidance and for healing and for comfort, all the things that the Spirit of truth, the divine spark within us, was created to give to us when we asked. When we ask. Now, the whole thing about Spirit will give you all the answers that Spirit has for you when you ask, and only when you ask, is not because Spirit is conditional. It's because Spirit knows that until you ask, you really don't want it. And when you don't want love's answer, when you don't want Spirit's answer, you're not going to hear it, no matter how compellingly Spirit relates it to you. That's why it is ask and you shall receive. Ask and you shall be answered. So we practice asking. All right. So we've asked Spirit, decide for us which book of the Course that we study from today. And we have the random number generator app right here. And so I've got 1 through 3 books of the Course, and it is the text. All right. And so we know that there are 31 chapters in the text. And I'm going to, now I put in 31 chapters of the text, and it's 11. So now we're going to go to chapter 11 to see how many sections there are, to know what else to put into the random number generator.
And the annotated was 9.
Okay, thank you very much. 9, all right. And we are going to be in the annotated here. And so where that is in the blue covered edition, I'm not sure yet. So maybe we'll find that out. So here we go. So 9. And I show you this, guys, because it's such a fantastic way to get very clear, powerful answers and instructions from Spirit using the Course in Miracles. It's a great way to, some people use tarot, some people use astrology, some people use the runes, some people use tea leaves. Course in Miracles is a fantastic, brilliant, miraculous, to say the least, way to get answers. I mean, specific, immediate answers for whatever your call for love is. That's why I show you myself doing it. All right, so here we go. So it's chapter 11, section 6. And wonderful. I'm going to hand this back to Greg. All right.
Selecting perceptions witnesses.
What is it?
Selecting
Oh.
perceptions witnesses.
Selecting perceptions witnesses. Wait a minute. Chapter 11. Okay, so I'm in the annotated. And so if you have the blue covered edition, do we have the blue covered edition in the office? Yeah, because then maybe Greg will help us to see what it is in the blue covered edition. If you have the blue covered edition on your phone, in your Kindle, then what you can do is you can go to your Kindle, go to the search app, and put in the first sentence of this section, and then it will show you where that is in the blue covered edition. All right, so thank you for your patience while I make the transfer from the blue covered edition to the annotated edition. And the annotated edition is just where it's at, and I would love for you guys to join with me in that. If you have a Kindle app on your phone, you can get the blue cover. You can get the annotated edition on Kindle for $10 to have it on your phone. Best $10 investment you'll ever make. All right. Hi, Carol. Hi, Maria. Lovely to see you. Hi, Mercedes. Lovely to see you all. Lovely to see your name and to feel your energy. So I'm going to take off my jacket. It's getting a little warm in here already. This fire is blazing behind me. All right. Thank you much for that right there. Thank you. Okay. All right, guys. Here we go. Hi, Bridget. Okay, so we did ask Spirit what Spirit would have us hear. We did say to Spirit, you know our calls for help, you know our calls for love, you know what we need to hear. So here we go. Monica says, I threw out the annotated. Someone told me it wasn't original. Okay. Well, whoever got that book had a lucky break. All right. So the annotated edition has the 45,000 words that came through the scribe Helen Schuckman that were edited out of the first 2 editions. And that's why I use this one, because it is the most original. It contains everything that was left out. Now, the stuff that was left out is very, very interesting stuff, especially for me as a psychologist. And I mean, the annotated edition talks about all kinds of things that we deal with on a personal level that you would think that that were left out of the first 2 editions. So, yes, beautiful. And also, don't forget, you can get a Kindle edition on your phone for $10. The big one is expensive. Anyway, beautiful. Mercedes says, I love it. Okay, here we go. Selecting, choosing, selecting, perceptions, witnesses. Okay, so we're selecting something. It says, the ego analyzes, the Holy Spirit accepts. What does the ego do? Analyzes, breaks down, separates out, pulls apart. The ego analyzes. What does this mean? What is it for? What is this? What is it? The ego breaks down and analyzes. Your loving right mind accepts. Now, the appreciation of wholeness comes only through acceptance. Why? Because to analyze means to separate out. So your loving right mind accepts. It accepts what? It accepts what? Wholeness. Your loving right mind. Yes, Thank you, Greg.
In the blue book, it's chapter 11, paragraph 13.
Thank you, 11:13. Okay, if you have the blue covered edition, it is chapter 11, section 13. What's the name of it?
It's just a paragraph that starts,
The name of that section?
is the dynamics of the ego.
Oh, all
Section
right.
5,
Okay.
paragraph 13.
In the blue covered edition, it's the dynamics of the ego,
Chapter 11,
chapter 11,
section 5,
section 5,
paragraph 13.
paragraph 13, in the dynamics of the ego, in the blue covered edition. Now, if you are watching this and you want to post that, that would be so great. I don't think Greg is on to post it, but so in the blue covered edition, it's chapter 11, section 5, paragraph 13. In the annotated edition, it is chapter 11, section 6. All right, we got that covered. All right. Hi, Teresa. Lovely to see you. Okay, here we go. It says the appreciation of wholeness comes only through acceptance. So what's the goal here? When you're in your right mind, your loving right mind, what you are going to be appreciating is wholeness. Everything's whole. We are whole. We're all connected. We all have it all. Wholeness. We are all one whole. I am whole. You are whole. We all are part of the whole. We're not separate. We're not set apart. We're not different. We are all part of one wholeness called love, called God, called life. Your loving right mind appreciates wholeness, wholeness. The ego analyzes, separates out, breaks down, okay? That's the difference between the two parts of your mind, ego and loving right mind. It says, the attempt to understand totality by breaking totality up is clearly the characteristically contradictory approach of the ego to everything. So the ego is always about breaking stuff up, separating stuff out, analyzing, breaking down, breaking up, breaking it apart. That's what the ego is always about. Oh, this is different than that. And this is different than that. And I am different from you. And you are different from me. Analyzing for differences, breaking down, separating out is what the ego is all about. But your loving right mind, your wise mind, appreciates totality, appreciates wholeness. We're all a part of one totality, one mind, one love, one spirit, one truth, one life. That's what your right mind appreciates. Okay? That's what's going on when you're in your loving right mind. Hi, Trisha, lovely to see you. But the ego is always about breaking stuff down, separating stuff out. Okay, good to know the difference between the two thought systems that are present in your mind right now. You have two belief systems in your mind. So at the moment, our mind is split between two thought systems, two belief systems. One we learned, and one was given us in creation. The one called the belief system based on wholeness and totality and connection, that was given us by our source. That's reality. The other thought system, the ego, is the one that we as humans made up for ourselves, And it's all about separation and differences and analysis of differences. Now, it says, never forget that the ego believes that power, understanding, and truth lie in separation. That's what the ego believes. And we were just given an instruction, don't forget, never forget that the ego believes that power, understanding, and truth lie in analysis, breaking things down, breaking things apart, separating this from that, perceiving differences. That the ego believes that power and understanding come from analysis, separation. And never forget that. And to establish this belief in separation, I'm separate from this, you're separate from that, or we're separate from source, or we're separate from them, we're different, we're separate. It says to establish this belief in our separation, the ego must attack. Never forget that.
War is power.
War, separation is power. Believes the ego. Yes, Bridget says we just witnessed this. Yes, we're witnessing this all the time in the ego world. The ego believes that power comes from war. The ego believes that power comes in, we're separate, we're different, we're enemies. I'm me and not you, and there hence my power. The ego believes that if you join, you lose. The ego believes only when you separate and war will you have power and understanding and truth. Okay? So, and it says never forget this. Don't forget that. Don't never forget that. That the ego believes that your power and your understanding and truth comes from seeing others as different, as separate from you and everyone else. That's what the ego believes understanding, power, and truth comes from. And to establish this misunderstanding, the ego must attack. So what does the ego do? It attacks. And how does the ego attack? By analyzing to break down, analyzing for differences. The ego's like, how are we different? Let's break this down. Let's analyze this. Let's analyze this. We're different because, and that's what the ego is always contemplating. It's always analyzing for differences, separation. And when the ego does this, or the way the ego does this is by attacking. There's only one way to make that which is one with you seem different and separate from you. There's only one way to do it. And that is, to attack. By analyzing, breaking down, separating out.
What did they say to me? And then what did they do?
Yeah, what they say to me, and why did they do that, and what was their motivation. The ego must attack. So the ego, in order to establish the ego's lie, that separation gives you power and understanding and truth, the ego's got to attack everything. So when the ego is analyzing everything, breaking stuff down into its separate components, analyzing for differences, that is how the ego attacks. The ego is always attacking to make separate. The ego is always attacking to make different.
So as soon as you hear somebody's story start to tell you what happened in the day, you realize the gathering, analyzing evidence
Yes,
to get ready to perform a justified attack.
exactly. The ego will always begin by telling you how you and this other person are different. We're different because, well, they have different values and they have different goals. The ego is always going to be analyzing the situation for differences, for separateness, how and why we're different, how and why we are not the same. And the Course in Miracles says that there can be no peace among enemies. And the Course in Miracles says, as soon as you see someone as separate from you, different from you, and I don't mean different just in terms of the physical, but different from you, as soon as you see someone else as separate from you, A Course in Miracles says, they immediately become your enemy. Because if this person is different from you, then now you must protect yourself against them, lest their different motives attack your different motives. So it's the perception of differences and separateness which makes the perception of enemies seem real. And he says, you can never have peace while you perceive yourself to have an enemy. It cannot happen. So as long as you see others as different from yourself, then you are making them someone you need to defend yourself against.
And if you don't attack, all that analyzing the situation.
Exactly. Of course, a miracle says that if you don't attack, then you'll have no truth, you'll have no understanding, and you'll have no power. You'll just be, you'll be absorbed into the oneness. So the ego is all about how we're different and establishing how we're different, analyzing our differences for the purpose of making us safe, says the ego. You know, and the ego is thinking, what's the best way to be safe? Analyze the motives of others. Analyze your enemies. Get to know your enemies is the best way to be safe, says the ego. That all truth and power and understanding comes from analyzing differences. All right. So that's what the ego is all about. And then when we are thinking with the ego thought system, then how does that make our relationships go? When you're thinking with the thought system of the ego, all you can see is enemies and potential threats. Now, some of those folks, you know, it will go by the name of love, or the name of a loving relationship. But if you are seeing with your ego, you will see no equals, you will see no friends, you will only see enemies that you must protect yourself from. Now, we have all experienced that in our relationships, and that's exactly how we are in our relationships when we are thinking with the ego and believing in differences. You can't see someone as different than you and not be afraid of them, not be in a defensive position with them, not feeling. It's impossible if you see someone as different than yourself, separate than you, not one and equal with you and the universe. It's impossible to not be afraid of them. It's impossible to not be constantly analyzing what are their motives. Right? Now, that does not make for peaceful, loving relationships. That doesn't make for peaceful, loving, holy relationships with anyone in your world. Now, what's the opposite of the way the ego sees? The opposite of the way the ego sees is your loving right mind's perception, where it knows of the totality, it knows of wholeness, it knows of oneness. It knows we are one with each other, and we are one with our source, and we are one with all of creation. Your loving right mind knows that you are a part of the totality, and so is everyone else. And when you know that you are part of the totality, and you know of wholeness and oneness, then you have no enemies. You have no fears. You have nothing to defend. You have nothing to protect. You have no need for attack. Attack is only necessary when there's differences and hence enemies and opponents. Wow. So your loving right mind knows of wholeness, oneness, and totality. All right. Now, here we go. Hi, Daniel. Lovely to see you. It says in the ego to establish this lie that that truth and understanding and power lie in separation. To establish this belief, the ego must attack. Unaware that the belief in separation cannot be established, and obsessed with the conviction that separation is safety, the ego attacks everything it perceives. And how does the ego attack everything it perceives? Oh, by analyzing it, by breaking it up into small and disconnected parts without meaningful relationships, and thus without meaning. So the ego is obsessed. Okay, that's a perfect word for the ego. Perfect description of the ego. Obsessed. Obsessed with a fantasy. Obsessed with something that isn't true. If you want to make something that isn't true, you're going to have to be obsessed. You're going to have to be on it all the time, everywhere, all the time, attacking everything. The ego is obsessed with the conviction that separation and differences and enemies and inequality and defending yourself and protecting yourself from the different motives of the different people is salvation, is the only safety and security, says the ego. So the ego is obsessed with analysis, okay? So the ego is constantly analyzing the differences between itself and the world, believing that this is the only way for safety and security. Wow. I really see that with people who have experienced trauma in their life, in their past. These are people who are hyper vigilant. They feel like in order for me to be safe, I have to be analyzing all the differences in the scenario every second. I have to be analyzing the motives of the people who are different than me, who have different motivations than me. And so I have to be constantly analyzing their motives. I have to be constantly on guard in order to be safe. Okay? That's what the ego is about. The ego is obsessed with analyzing the motives of others around you who your ego tells you are not part of you and who are not like you in order for you to be safe. Okay? Can anybody relate to that? Yes. Monica says, thank you so much for your input from the psychologist. Yes. The Course in Miracles is the ultimate psychology book. I, as a psychologist, I have studied a lot of books of psychology, and nothing calls it better than A Course in Miracles. So, Course in Miracles truly is the ultimate book on the psychology of mind, and the psychology of ego, and the psychology of your loving right mind, your sane mind. So it's brilliant. the Course in Miracles talks about the psychology of having a split mind, which we all have. And it says that when you have a split mind, you have a sick mind. And a split mind is when you have two belief systems in your mind. You're trying to hold them both in your mind, and they are exactly opposite. And that's what we're doing right now. So, you know, most people have two opposite belief systems in their mind, have no idea that they have a split mind or a sick mind. Of course, in Miracles comes along and goes, you know, you got a sick mind, you got a split mind, you got two completely opposite thought systems in your mind, and you're ping-ponging back and forth between the two of them all the time, which makes life feel very chaotic and very scary because, you know, seems to be no stability here. And of course, in Miracles then says, and there is a way to side with one of those thought systems and side with it more and more and more consistently, and think only with that thought system more and more consistently, so that your experience can be more consistent instead of more chaotic. If your life and your relationships are chaotic right now, it's because you're vacillating. You're vacillating between ego and spirit, fear and love. You're vacillating between two opposite thought systems. Now, and that cannot lead to a sense of stability and peace of mind, okay? It leads to a feeling of chaos and inconsistency. So, beautiful. Hi, Greg, lovely to see you. And hi, Carol Evans. All right. So it says, the ego is obsessed with the conviction that seeing differences and separation is safety and security. And that's why the ego is always attacking everything it perceives. How? By analyzing everything, breaking everything up into small, disconnected parts without meaningful relationships, and thus without meaning. So the ego has no perception of the whole, the totality of which we are all a part, the one truth, the one mind, the one love. The ego is obsessed with the conviction that separation is safety and security, so it's always attacking everything by seeing everything as disconnected parts with no meaningful relationships. And when you don't see the meaningful relationships between all the different little parts of your world and your life, then you don't see the meaning of your life, and the meaning of your relationships comes from seeing all the connections between all the parts. That's when you go, oh, I get it. I'm one. I'm one self, united with my Creator, at one with all of creation. We're all one. We're all one mind. We're all one consciousness. We're all one creation. Oh, okay. So, but the ego doesn't see the connection between all the seeming disconnected parts in your life and in your world. As you start to wake up and start to think and perceive more with your right mind, you will see the connection between all the parts of your life and world and relationships that you used to think were all separate. So that's what it means to be waking up. You're like, oh, I see the connections. There's a connection. Everything I'm experiencing is connected. Yeah, to what? To me, to my mind, and to everything else. The reality of reality is connectedness. This is connected to that, and you are connected to them, and they are connected to them, and they are connected to you, and we are all connected to Source, and it is all connected. Wholeness, totality. That's what correct perception, that's what a healed mind, a unified consciousness perceives. Now, when your consciousness is unified because you see the connections between everything and source, now you have a healed mind, a mind that isn't split. Okay? A split mind is a sick mind, and a sick mind leads to a sick body and a sick life. We want a unified consciousness. The only way to have a unified mind is to see the connections in everything and the connections between you and source. So that's the perception that we're going for. And that is the perception that our loving right mind, our higher self is always seeing and always offering for our vision. All right. So if you want to have a healing in any area of your life, one of the first things that you can do is stop analyzing for the differences, how and why they're different and you're different and their goals are different, and analyzing their motives to see where their motives are out of line with your motives, and start looking for the connections. Where's the connection between me and this experience? Where's the connections here? Where's the sameness? Where are the connections here in my experience? That's the first thing to start looking for. Connectedness between, the very start, at the very least, look for the connection between your thoughts and your experience. Oh, yeah, those things are happening in my life aren't random accidents. They're connected to my thoughts. They're connected to my fears and my beliefs. I gotcha. Alrighty, okay. And all the people that in my experience, they're connected to me. They're here because there's a connection here. What do you mean a connection? Well, there's something that we've been brought together to learn. Spirit has connected us for something to learn. There's something for us to both learn. That's why we're connected. That's where we're together. So start looking for the connections between your thoughts and your experiences, and connections between the people in your experience, and also the connections between you and source. All right. Okay. Then it says this. It says the ego will always substitute chaos for meaning, chaos for connection. Because if separation is safety and happiness, then harmony is threat. I see. Okay, where the ego is coming from is being revealed. Right. The ego believes that being different and being separate protects you and makes you feel safe. I need to analyze the differences between me and them in order to be safe and secure. If the ego perceives separateness and differences as security, then what do you think the ego is going to perceive in harmony? It's going to perceive threat. What does the ego perceive in harmony? The ego perceives threat. Okay, very, very, very important. Okay, when you perceive connection, then you perceive meaning, and then you experience harmony. Where does harmony come from? I see the connections. I see the connections between my thoughts and my experience, and I see the connection between me and the people in my experience, and I see the connection between me and my source, and I see the connection between them and their source. I see the connections here. Now my relationships in my life has meaning, and look at that, harmony. Harmony comes from the experience of meaning in life, and the experience of meaning in life comes from seeing the connections. And so how, of course, would the ego experience harmony? As a threat. Ego says separateness and analyzing the differences makes you safe. And so now the ego perceives harmony and connection as threat. Wow. And what does the ego do when the ego feels threatened? Anyone? Anyone? What does the ego do when the ego feels threatened?
Attack.
It attacks.
Just like the storming of the Capitol, people thought it would make them stronger by attacking after they not analyzed everything going on.
Exactly.
But all it's done is separated more.
Exactly. Greg was using the example of the riot at the Capitol and how the rioters had been analyzing for the separation and the differences and perceived a threat and thought that attacking the Capitol would somehow bring them increased security and power. Exactly. Right. So that's a great example of the ego thought system versus your loving right mind, your peaceful belief system. All right. Beautiful. Exactly, Bridget. That was one paragraph. I can't even believe that. That was one paragraph. Now we're in paragraph 2. So we're in chapter 11, section 6 in the annotated, paragraph 2, and we're chapter 11, section 5, paragraph 13 in the blue covered edition. Okay. All right. Paragraph 2. The ego's interpretation of the laws of perception is, and would have to be, the exact opposite of your loving right mind's. Why is that? That's because the ego focuses on error and overlooks the truth. That's all the ego does. That's all the ego does. Focus on error. Focus on the differences. Focus on the different forms. Focus on the differences. And overlooks the truth of wholeness, totality, oneness. That's the ego's interpretation of the laws of perception. Okay? The ego's interpretation of laws of perception is, look, there's only separation going on here. There's only differences, and differences that make you unsafe that you have to protect yourself from. You got to be vigilant against. The ego focuses on error and overlooks the truth. The ego makes every mistake it perceives. The ego does what? The ego makes real every difference that it sees. The ego makes real every difference, every mistake that it sees, and with characteristically circular reasoning concludes that because of the mistake, because of the differences, consistent truth must be meaningless. The next step then is obvious in the ego's thinking. In the ego's thinking then, if consistent truth is meaningless, then inconsistency must be true if truth has meaning. This is how the ego thinks. Okay? So the ego is saying that because of those differences, then there is no totality, there is no oneness, there is no wholeness. And so the ego then goes to say, well, wholeness and totality must be not true. It must be only that differences and inconsistency is the truth, says the ego. Now, the ego holds error clearly in mind. That's what the ego does. It focuses on the error. What does it do? It focuses on error. Right? And yes, that it made real. Says that the ego holds the error, the differences between us and them. The ego holds those differences between us and them very clearly in its mind. And the ego then protects the differences the enmity that it may real. It protects it. And then, how does it do that? It makes the error of the differences real and protects the differences that it made, that it perceives. And what does the ego do now? It proceeds to the next step in the ego's thought system, that the error, the differences are real, and it's the oneness and the wholeness. Oh, that must be error, says the ego in its thought system. Okay, so we're talking about the ego. All right, Jerry says audio is gone. Okay, it's back. Okay, great. Thank you, Jerry. All right, so we're learning about the ego's thought system. And it's important to learn about the ego's thought system, because only as you know how the ego thinks can you recognize the ego and recognize when you're thinking with your ego. And only then can you go, yeah, I don't want to do that, because I know what comes from ego thinking. I know what comes from the ego's thought system. What comes from the ego's thought system is attack. And what comes from the ego's thought system is only sight of differences, and hence need for attack, for security. And you know what comes from that is not love and peace and harmony. It's everything that comes from attack, which is death, destruction, pain, sorrow, sickness, lack, all of those negative experiences, all the things we say we don't want to experience, pain, disaster, sickness, lack, poverty, all those things come from the ego's belief system. All those negative experiences are symptoms. They are the result of the ego's thought system. The ego only thinks for differences and attack and defense. And so the only thing that comes from the ego's thought system is pain, disaster, disunity, sickness, poverty, and all the things that we have come to experience as so-called normal on earth. So we really want to understand the thought system that is the ego. Okay? The ego is a thought system that we adopted, that we said yes to before we knew better. All right. And so the only way to say no to that way of thinking is to learn about it, so that we can recognize it, so that when we see the symptoms of it, we can say, I must have been agreeing with my ego, thinking with my ego, and I don't like the way I feel, so I am going to now think with another part of my mind, a more loving part of my mind, the part of my mind that knows about wholeness and oneness and totality, knowing that we're all connected, and all things are connected, and all beings are connected. All of life is connected with itself and each other and the source. So I'm going to switch my thinking from differences and separateness and all the defensiveness that needs to happen around that, and I'm going to switch it to the thought system of wholeness and totality. Why? Because I don't like the way I'm feeling over here. I don't like what comes over here. I don't like what comes from seeing myself as separate and different and seeing my saviors as enemies and needing to defend myself and being hyper vigilant and never feeling safe, and never having an experience where I can trust love. I don't want that. It doesn't feel good at all. And besides, I've already done that. Been there, done that. I now want to do something different. All right. Hi, Irene. Lovely to see you. Trisha says, I'm getting good at, quote, changing my mind. Good job, Trisha. I know you are. Beautiful. All right. Hi, Irene says, hi, Mighty Companions. I'm late. I had a 4-H meeting. Awesome. I love it. And then Trisha says, when it starts to fester, throw bacon on it. Okay. Trisha, is that a saying that people say on the Western Slope? Is that a Grand Junction saying, Trisha?
It's in chapter 18 of the course.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, are you quoting the course, Trisha? Something about bacon? Okay. All right. So, wonderful. I love it. Now, so we're still talking about the ego. Yeah, in the blue covered edition, this section is called the dynamics of the ego, right? The dynamics. So in this section, we're learning about the thought system of the ego so that we can recognize it and choose differently when we're tired of suffering from the effects of the ego's thought system. There's only one thing that comes from the ego's thought system, and that is suffering, and that is pain. The pain that comes from, and the fear that comes from seeing yourself as really separate from everything in your world, seeing yourself as disconnected from the world, seeing everything in your life as disconnected from you, seeing yourself as disconnected from source, seeing others as disconnected from their source. That can only lead to an experience where you feel separate, which means disconnected, which means alone, which means vulnerable, which means scared, which means guilty. Now, but when you know that you're connected, everything in your experience is connected to your thoughts, everyone in your life is a part of you, connected to you. When you know that you are connected to your source, when you know they are connected to your source, now you can relax. Now you don't have to be hypervigilant. Now you don't have to be always thinking that you gotta protect yourself by being hypervigilant about noticing all the differences in every situation, in every relationship. Okay, so understanding the nature of the ego's thought system is the first step toward not thinking it and not being a victim of it. Right? It enables you to choose a different thought system. And that choice is our ultimate freedom. Of course, in Miracle says, ultimately, you are free, because in any moment and in every moment, no matter what's happening, nothing, and I don't care how bad it is, nothing can take from you the power of your choice to choose once again which thought system that you want to follow, that you want to think with. Nothing can take away from you the power to choose again which thought system, fear or love, that you want to think with and join with. That's why you'll always be free. That's why any experience of limitation or imprisonment is just in your mind. It is not true. Hallelujah. You're always free to choose again. And that is your ultimate freedom and your ultimate power. And nothing can take that away from you. And that, my friends, is the good news. That is the good news that A Course in Miracles is teaching us on every page in every chapter. All right. Tricia says, Palisade positive thought. Everything is changed when bacon appear, like the Course, Change for Life. All right. Okay. Beautiful. And hi, Robert. Lovely to see you too. Irene, we are in chapter... Irene, if you have the blue covered edition, it's chapter 11, section 5 or 6. It's in the blue covered edition.
In the blue covered, it's page 205.
In the blue covered edition, it's page 205, Irene. Okay. All right.
Paragraph 14.
Yes, paragraph 14. And then Irene says, we are always free to choose again. That is the good news. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now we're on paragraph 3. It says, the ego makes no attempt to understand this. For real, of course it doesn't. And the ego is clearly, and the ego's thought system is clearly not understandable. but the ego does make every attempt to demonstrate its thought system. And demonstrating the ego's thought system, the ego does constantly. That's all the ego's doing, is demonstrating its thought system. Okay? Now, here's what the ego does. Okay? This is how the ego thinks, or why the ego thinks. This is the ego's MO right here. Analyzing to attack meaning. That's what it does. And by analyzing to attack meaning, the ego does succeed in overlooking meaning. And then the ego is then left with a series of fragmented perceptions, which the ego unifies on behalf of itself. And then this series of fragmented perceptions the ego unifies on behalf of itself. It's like an ego patchwork, like an ego quilt, okay? In the ego's perception, here's this, which is separate and disconnected from that, separated, disconnected from this, and the ego puts it all together, and makes this quilt, or this patchwork, or this soup, which then it says where the ego unifies on behalf of itself. And then this chaotic patchwork of fragmented perceptions becomes the universe the ego perceives, and it is this fragmented series of fragmented perception patchwork. It is this universe which in turn becomes the ego's demonstration of its own reality. So the ego takes a thread from here, a thing from here, a thread from here, all these disconnected, fragmented perceptions, and it throws it all together in this chaotic, not meaningful mix and goes, here's reality. And so that's what the ego offers us as reality, this fragmented, chaotic, so-called reality that has no meaning because it's chaotic. It's not consistent. Why? Because the ego sees everything as disconnected. When you got this disconnected thing and this disconnected event and this disconnected person, and this just happened to happen over here, and this thing just happened to happen over here, no connection between any of it, it's just chaos. Well, this happened, no connection to anything. That happened, no connection to anything. It's just chaos. Okay? If you are experiencing any kind of chaos in your experience in your life right now, you can be sure that you have been thinking with the ego's thought system. The ego's like, think with me, you'll be safe. And then we think with the ego, and then there's just a bunch of random, disconnected things that seem to have no meaning, and it just feels chaotic. Okay? That's how you know you've been letting your thinking be guided by your ego. Now, it also is telling us how to switch to another thought system that's coherent and cohesive, where there is harmony and where there is peace. And that's a thought system which sees connection and totality and oneness within everything. It sees the connection between you and them. It sees the connection between the events in your life and your thoughts. It sees the connection between you and your source. It sees the connection between you and them as you've got something to learn together. And it sees the connection of all of us with our source. That is a thought system. That is a way of perceiving that brings harmony. That brings peace. All right. So that's what we are going for. So if you're experiencing chaos, just know, oh man, I have been, boy, oh boy, I've been thinking with my ego now. Yeah, I have. I can tell because I'm experiencing total chaos, meaning no meaning. Chaos means no meaning. I don't see any meaning here. I don't see any consistency, and everything seems to be different and random and at war with everything else. And there's no way that you can be experiencing your life as chaotic and meaningless and experience peace and a sense of real safety and security. It's only when you see the connection between yourself, your thoughts, and your experience, and the connection between you and others, and the connection between you and your source, only then were you going to experience life with meaning. Like, I see the meaning of life. Oh, I get it. I see my life has meaning now. I get it. Okay, beautiful. That's where harmony and peace comes from. Beautiful. Now we're on paragraph 3. How are we doing on time? All right, everybody take a breath. Talking about some heavy duty stuff here. We are outing the ego. Okay? Outing the ego. All right? Outing a thought system that you have in your mind that is producing chaos in your life. All right, paragraph 4. Do not underestimate the appeal of the ego's demonstrations to those who would listen to the ego. Period. That's an instruction, and a very important instruction. Okay? To somebody who wants to see chaos and separation and threat and danger and wants to see that, then don't underestimate the appeal that the ego's demonstration will have for you or for them when that's what you want to see. When you want to see disaster, disunity, evil, enemies, when you want to see threat and you want to see separation, then don't underestimate the appeal of that demonstration. If somebody wants to believe that, then you better believe that they're going to see it, and they're going to protect it, and they're going to cherish it, and they're going to defend it with their life. Wow. It says don't underestimate the appeal for the ego's demonstrations for those who want to side with the ego. You are not going to talk somebody out of believing that what's going on here is a demonstration of separation for somebody who wants to believe that separation is reality. And who is it who believes that separation, seeing differences is reality? Who is it that believes that that's security? It's those who believe that separateness, that seeing and perceiving the differences makes them feel safe. Those are the folks that are going to die to defend the differences and the separateness that they see in the world. All right, beautiful. Okay. Bridget says, this explains a lot. I understand. Beautiful. Thank you, Bridget. And Irene says, oh, I see the meaning of my life, peace and harmony. We are outing the ego. Yes. And Jerry says, there is no randomness where chaos is from ego thinking. Right. There is, when you see that everything is random, what you're seeing is, what you're perceiving is chaos. Okay? And when you experience chaos, like this is so random, like I don't know where any of this came from. I don't see a connection between any of this and my thoughts. I don't see a connection here between me and them. Everything seems so random. That is a perception where you can't feel safe. You can't feel safe when there's chaos going on. But when you see the connections, now you have an awareness of your power to choose. And now you're going to feel safer, more secure. Because now you know that if you want to experience something different, something more harmonious, all you have to do is recognize the connections, the totality, the wholeness between your thoughts and your experience and also these brothers and sisters around you. When you see that there's a connection between all of you and everything that's going on, now you can feel safe because now you know all you need to do is change your mind, meaning whom you're thinking with, love or fear, spirit or ego, in order to have a different experience. So you can feel safe. You can't feel safe in the midst of chaos that seems completely random. Random means chaos, means victim, means I'm not safe, and fear is real, right? Okay, beautiful. I love it. Okay, oh, and then Irene says, don't underestimate the appeal of the ego's demonstration to those who would listen, exactly what's happening politically, right? Now, then it says this, selective perception chooses its witness carefully, okay? Or we could just say this, perception is selective and perception chooses its witness carefully. And perception's witnesses are consistent.
It's like you trying to, so you know how the lawyers are selecting the jury members? No, I don't want that one.
It's exactly right. Thank you. It's a perfect example of how the lawyer interviews the jury members, you know? So like it's interviewing the jury members to see who sits on that jury for the trial. Well, exactly. And so the lawyer would be like, oh, let's see. Oh, do you believe in the death penalty? No. Okay, then we don't need you for the jury. Okay. So your perception is just like a lawyer interviewing people for the jury. Okay. So that's what perception is. Perception is selective. What you see, what you hear, all your perceptions. Course in Miracles says perception is selective. Perception is selective. And we choose what we perceive very carefully. It may seem like what you see and what you're experiencing and perceiving is random.
Yeah, just randomly presented to you.
I just randomly saw these things today. You wouldn't believe all the random things I saw today and heard.
What I believe.
Yeah, they just happened to confirm exactly what I was believing today. They just happened to confirm exactly what I was wanting to see today. So what it's saying here is very, 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 very important. It's very important because only as you know the connection between your selection and your perception, only then do you know that you are at power, that you have the power of decision, you have the power to choose, you have power over your experience. Only when you realize that your perception is selective and you're selecting it according to what you want to see, only then do you realize if I don't like what I'm seeing, I can select differently. Now, when you know that, then you will feel empowered. You won't feel like a helpless victim of your experience, of your life. This is what enables you to feel powerful. This is what enables you to experience life that doesn't feel random, which means chaotic, which means scary. This is the understanding of the true nature of perception that enables you to experience life as meaningful instead of random and chaotic. Okay? Or this is a way to experience your relationships as meaningful and harmonious as opposed to random and chaotic and unsafe. All right. So it says, selective perception chooses its witnesses carefully, and perception's witnesses are consistent. Okay? Yes, perception's witnesses are consistent with what? Your selection. Your perceptions are consistent with your selection. Now, that is very hard to believe. Okay, let's all just acknowledge that. It's very hard to believe that I selected that because it's consistent with what I want to be true. Okay, that's very hard to believe. But it's the only way to experience life as not chaotic and random. It's the only way to experience life and your relationships in a way that they have meaning. Okay? And when something is random and chaotic, it's the opposite of saying it has meaning. Something that's random and chaotic has no meaning. Like, why did that happen? I don't know. It's totally meaningless. It's so random. Okay? So the opposite of random and chaotic is meaningful and consistent. What you are seeing is always consistent with what you want to see. Okay? And it always comes down to, what do you want to see? Do you want to see fear or love? Do you want to see guilt or innocence? It's simple. It just comes down to one or two options. Okay? Do you want to see love or do you want to see fear? If you want to see love, then no matter what you see, you're going to see a call for love. Okay? If you want to see differences and separateness because you think that makes you feel safe, then whatever you see, you're going to see as something that's different from you that you got to protect yourself from. You're going to just see life as a bunch of situations and people that you got to protect yourself from, that you got to be hypervigilant around. Okay? And if you have got a lot of anxiety going on in your life, then you are seeing life as random, chaotic series of events that have no connections to you or to anything else. And you're seeing yourself as disconnected from source. You're seeing yourself as a random event. I'm just a random event. You know, my parents randomly got together and then I randomly popped out on a certain day and I'm here randomly and everything that happens is random. Ain't no connection here. That's just some spiritual woo-woo, whatever. Okay. So this is the awareness that enables us to experience life with meaning, which means harmoniously, which means with safety. When I see the connections between my perceptions and my selections, then I will experience more meaning and therefore more safety in my life. And that's what I am going for. How about y'all? Okay, it says selective perception chooses its witnesses carefully, and perception's witnesses are consistent with your selection. The case for insanity is strong to the insane. Why? Because reasoning ends at the ego's beginning, and no thought system transcends its source. So whatever thoughts come from the ego are going to be just like the ego, which is insane. And how does the ego think? What is the truth in the ego's thought system? The ego's thought system, in the ego's belief system, disconnection and randomness is the only reality. Differences, not connection, is the only reality in the ego's belief system. So anything that comes from the ego is going to be just as insane as the ego. Whatever comes from your ego is going to be as chaotic and disconnected and not safe as the ego itself is. All right. Now, it says, yet reasoning without meaning cannot demonstrate anything, which means those who are convinced by it must be deluded. Whoever is convinced by the ego's demonstration must be deluded. Okay? Anybody who looks at the ego's demonstration of disconnection and separation and enemies and war and chaos and is like, oh man, that's real, that's reality, they are just as deluded as the ego is. Can the ego teach truly while the ego overlooks truth? Can the ego perceive what the ego has denied? What has the ego denied? Wholeness, unity, totality. Can the ego see the totality and wholeness and connection that the ego has denied? The ego's witnesses do attest to totality's denial, but hardly to what the ego has denied. In other words, the ego looks straight at God and doesn't see God. Why? Because the ego has denied God's creation. Wow. The ego looks straight at God and doesn't see God. The ego looks straight at reality and truth and wholeness and doesn't see it. Okay? That's the truth about the ego.
Because it's not looking for it.
Why?
So it can't
Exactly. Why does the ego not see wholeness and totality and unity and oneness? Because the ego ain't looking for it. The ego doesn't want it. The ego is the opposite of the truth of wholeness, unity, oneness, and connection. So the ego looks right at connection, how connected we all are, and that everything is, and it don't see that connection. The truth of connection between us and each other and everything in the universe and us and our source and us and everyone, that is the most obvious thing there is in the whole universe. The most obvious thing, the one truth, and the most obvious thing in the universe is connection, unity, totality, and wholeness. One love, one spirit, one source, one creation, one truth, one life is the most obvious thing in reality. But the ego looks straight at it and doesn't see the connection, the unity, the totality. Why? Because the ego don't want to see it. Because the ego wants to see enemies. The ego wants to see differences. The ego wants to see the differences that makes enemies seem real, so that the ego can keep the war and the separation going that the ego is. The ego is the belief in separation. That's what it is. And so it's got to see separation everywhere it looks in order to stay, in order to exist. So you got two ways of seeing. One is to see separation and differences and enemies and that you need to defend yourself against. The war's got to be constant. Or you can look at things from the perspective of your loving right mind, where we're all one, we're all connected, everything's connected. And now even our science, our quantum physics is telling us everything's connected. Wholeness and unity and totality is reality. When you go beneath the level of form, the reality is unity, totality, wholeness, connection. But the ego is never going to see that. You're never going to see that with your ego's perception. When your perception is being guided by your ego, you'll never see that, ever, because your ego ain't looking for that. All right, so it's 8:22, so I'm going to stop here, and then we are going to do announcements, and then we're going to do a few minutes of an integration meditation. Awesome. So let me grab my chapstick. I gotta have my chapstick for the integration meditation. Okay. All right. Okay. So First of all, I just want to say I'm just so thrilled to have you all here sharing this and co-creating this healing circle that we do co-create whenever we come together to listen to the ideas from A Course in Miracles. Okay, what's the one problem on earth is the belief in separation. What's the one answer on earth? It is the truth of unity, connection, wholeness. And so whenever we come together to remember unity, connection, wholeness, totality, we really are bringing the light of truth into the planet, into the minds of the beings that we are one with. So good job, and I thank you and all the world and all of creation that benefits from us remembering this together thanks you as well. So way to use a Monday night. So thank you for using your precious time to join this healing circle. Now, between Greg and I, my holy companion partner, we do 4 live streams a week. Beautiful. And so those 4 classes are on Sundays. Greg and I do a healed relationship series. So we're looking at what A Course in Miracles says about how to have a healed relationship. And what A Course in Miracles says about that is completely different than anything you've ever heard before about how to have a healed, happy, healthy, loving, abundant relationship. So we do that on Sundays. On Mondays, like tonight, I do the Miracle Roulette, where we allow Spirit to choose for us what we hear in A Course in Miracles through the random number generator. And on Tuesdays, Greg does his Facebook live stream where he does a synthesis of A Course in Miracles in the Bible. Very beautiful class. And then on Wednesdays, I teach in the annotated edition where I'm just going through, starting at chapter 1, section 1. I'm just making my way through. And that's Wednesdays, and I'm in chapter 6 currently for that. All right, so those are the 4 classes. All of those 4 classes are 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. On Sundays, Greg and I are kind of flexible about that. Last night we didn't even do it because we needed a break, needed a little vacation. And so basically 7 to 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time is when all of those Facebook live streams happen. And if you would like to see more of my classes and some of the ones with Greg too, then go to my YouTube channel, and then you can just see nothing but Course in Miracles classes and readings and meditations that I've posted from many years of teaching. All right. And if you would like to support this Miracles ministry, then one free, easy way to do that is to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. That signals to YouTube that this channel is valued, and it enabled me to go to YouTube Live soon. Also, if you would like to support this Miracles ministry, you can go to my website, AnnaKujawa.com, ANNAKUJAWA.com, and there's a PayPal button there, and that's one way that you can support this ministry. And I so appreciate all of you who have done that. It makes all the difference in the world to me. It enables me to extend this ministry to more around the world. And also, I am a holistic psychotherapist, and I have a psychotherapeutic niche where I offer psychotherapeutic support to people who could use some support as they go through some kind of transition or challenge, but they want it from a Course in Miracles perspective. And so if you are going through something and you would like some Course in Miracles perspective support, then I'm available for that. And the way to reach me for that is to text me. Either text me on Messenger or go to my website, AnnaKujawa.com, find my phone number and text me. It's always the best way to reach me is to text me. All right, so let's everybody take a breath, and now we're going to do the integration meditation. So I just want you to close your eyes and breathe. Awesome, and just tune in to how you feel right now, having heard these ideas from A Course in Miracles. And tune into how you feel having heard these ideas in a circle of like-minded mighty companions. Beings who are part of you that you are connected with. And just breathe. All right, so I want you to bring to your awareness a situation or relationship right now that has felt not harmonious, not peaceful, but chaotic. Like, what is the meaning of this? And I want you to bring that to your awareness. Beautiful. Now I want you to tell yourself, even if you don't believe it, we're just going to apply what we heard. I want you to tell yourself this. I am responsible for what I'm seeing in this situation, in this relationship. I selected what I am seeing, what I am perceiving. I selected what I am seeing. I selected how I am perceiving this person, this situation, this relationship. I selected this witness carefully. And we know you don't believe it. That's why you got that situation. So we're trying to apply the truth. And I want you to tell yourself, the witnesses that I am perceiving here are consistent with what I wanted to be the truth. And breathe. And now I want you to tell yourself, and what I wanted to see was how we were different, how I'm not like them, and they're not like me, and how we're not connected. Because I thought that would give me power, and I thought that would make me feel safe. I thought that would bring me safety, and I thought that would bring me power. I thought that my hypervigilance for our differences and their errors would bring me power and safety. And so I selected these witnesses, what I perceived, very carefully to show me separation. And I want you to tell yourself that what I am perceiving is a series of fragmented perceptions, disconnected events, disconnected characters. What I am perceiving is a perception of randomness, chaos, no connection, accidents. And that's why I'm afraid. It seems like pure chaos, randomness. Take a breath. Tell yourself, I am frightened and feel unsafe because I don't see the connection between these events and my thoughts. And I don't see the connection between me and the characters. And I'm not seeing connection between me and my source or them and their source. So I'm afraid and I feel unsafe. Beautiful. Now let us decide to switch to our other mind. Let us switch to our loving right mind, the spirit within us. Imagine yourself saying, I am switching thought systems. I am moving, I am not going to choose the thought system of disconnection, randomness, victimness, powerlessness, and chaos. So now I say, higher mind, spirit of truth, Holy Spirit within me, show me this situation or relationship from your thought system. Show me your interpretation of this situation or relationship. Show me the connections. Show me wholeness and totality and union. Show me how all of this is not random, but connected. How I am connected to them, and we are connected to each other, and these events are connected to my thoughts. Connection. Wholeness. Unity. Oneness. The opposite of random chaos. And breathe. Show me, Spirit, the connection between my experience in this situation or relationship and what I wanted to see. show me that I'm still strong. I'm not a victim of chaotic randomness. I don't need to be afraid. There's coherence here. There's cohesion here. There's consistency here. I'm not a victim. I am still strong because I can choose again what I want to see and whom I want to think with. And I choose to think with my loving right mind, the voiceful God within me that shows me connection, wholeness, totality, and union. And breathe in that power, and breathe in that peace. Spirit, decide for truth for me. Spirit, show me wholeness and connection for me. Decide for truth for me. What I want is truth. Beautiful. And then take a breath and bring your awareness back to your body, back to the room. Wonderful. Way to practice. Way to practice. That's how we do it. We read a course, we read what it's saying, try to understand what it's saying, and then we try to do it. Okay? So when you're reading A Course in Miracles, try to hear what it's saying, try to listen for the instructions, and then do it. I know it's a radical concept, but the Course in Miracles is an instruction manual for how to change your mind from thinking with your ego to thinking with your loving right mind. It's nothing but an instruction manual. And if you will do it, when you use it, you will see that it's true and you will experience the miraculous healing power of these ideas. I appreciate you all so much. Don't forget to go check out my YouTube channel, and I will see you next time I see you.